Today we're going to cook something just a little bit special. Hi, welcome along to Barbecue Life, the only YouTube channel dedicated to the Aldi Kamado. Today we are cooking the other half of the brisket from last week. We're doing the flat half and we're going to be doing this as a brisket roast dinner. So it's a nice and simple cook, but there are a few things that you've got to treat differently, as this is a UK brisket over a USDA prime brisket that you're going to get from America or Australia. So the marbling inside it is slightly different, so we do have to treat it slightly differently. So I picked this brisket up from McCade down at Faversham, and this has been dry aged for 5 weeks. So we need to trim a bit of this dry aged out as we're going. But I really liked it down at McCade when I went down there last week and I picked up these couple of briskets. Simon down there really knows what he's talking about. As I say, this has been dry aged in his dry ager for 5 weeks. The beef is Angus beef and it's from Sam Newington, his farm over in East Sussex. So it's quite local, or localish to me. Being in Kent, it's not that far, only sort of just over an hour away, and I really like the fact that I'm keeping things down in the southeast of England and I'm buying from a butcher that really knows what he's talking about. So the piece of meat is just over, and I mean just over 3 kilograms. And let's get on with giving this a trim. So because it's dry aged, as I say, we need to be taking just a very sliver off the very outside, just to be taking any of that dry aged bacteria that has been forming on the outside, flavouring that meat. We just need to be taking that off. So we just take a very sharp knife and we just take the very outside of the fat off, the ends of the brisket that's had the air get to it, and a little bit of that underside, but not too much. The underside's got a little bit of silver skin, so we want to take that off anyway. And then once we've got all of that dry aged off, we're not going to be using any of that dry aged trim. So now we just need to take the rest of the hard fat off, and we can keep hold of that for things like smash burgers. So I tend to stick mine in a sandwich bag and stick it in the freezer, and then we can add that to things like smash burgers or anything else that you need an extra bit of fat in there. So a nice drop of that in some roast potatoes works quite well as well. So we've got it all trimmed. Let's show you around the meat. So as you can see, it is quite lean for a brisket, but that is because it is UK and it's only pasture fed, it's not grain fed. So if it was grain fed, you'd have a lot more intermuscular fat in there, but because it's all pasture fed, you don't get that amount of fat, but you do get a much superior tasting piece of beef. So on with our rub. So as with always with beef, my binder is always Worcester sauce. So we're just going to completely cover the top, bottom and all the sides in that Worcester sauce, and then we're going on with our rub. So today we're using Black Angus coffee from the Rusty Barbecue Company, and that is going to really help give us a beautiful bark on the outside of this as we are cooking. There is a discount code down in the description below, which is Barbecue Life 10, to receive 10% off in any of your full price purchases over at the Rusty Barbecue Company's website. There's loads of rubs over there, as you can see. I've got loads behind me. There's a rub there for every occasion, so definitely go over there and have a look, and make sure you use that discount code to save yourself some pennies. So we've got that rub completely all the way over, all on the top, underneath, all on the sides, and as I say, it's going to give us a really nice colour on this brisket. So we want to let that rub set for a little while, so we're going to leave this at least an hour, but you can leave it overnight if you really wanted to. So it's now time to light our Kamado. So we're just going in, as always, we've got a mixture of fresh and some used charcoal that I've just knocked the ash off of in the bottom of the Kamado. A couple of wax woodies either side. Get them lit. Keep the lid open while they are taking, and then shut your lid down and open your vents fully once they've gone out. And as you start to feel the warmth on the side of the dome, that is when you want to be dialing in your temperatures, or about 40 to 50 degrees below where it needs to be on the dial. But you want to be making sure you've got a bit of heat in that ceramic beforehand, because otherwise if you shut your vents down too quickly, it's going to take a long time to come up to temperature, because all of that heat is just being absorbed by that thick ceramic on the outside. So it's come up to temperature, we've dialed our vents in. As you can see, we're about a finger on the bottom vent and about half open on the daisy wheel at the top, and this is going to give us around 150 degrees C, which is where we want for this brisket. So we need to be cooking it hot and fast, as I said before, with the point brisket. And if you have missed that video, make sure you go and check it out. I'll make sure that it is on the end screen at the end, so you can just click straight onto it and move straight onto the point video. But as I'm saying, we need to do hot and fast, because if we do low and slow, you're going to render too much of the fat out, and there's not a massive amount of fat inside this brisket anyway. So hot and fast is much better for pasture fed UK briskets, where low and slow is much better on your foreign briskets that are coming in that are grain fed. So all our temperatures are dialed in. We're just going to get this on. We're cooking indirectly over that deflector plate. I've put a piece of apple wood in there off camera, because I only want a real subtle smoke on this today. As I said, we're having this as a nice roast dinner for Easter Sunday, and I don't want too much smoke. We've got mother and father-in-law over, and she's not a massive fan of too much smoke, so just a nice piece of apple, which is going to give me a beautiful subtle smoky flavour without it being too overpowering. So directly over that deflector plate, and we're going to put it in for a couple of hours, where we're just going to let that bark set up. I'm monitoring the temperatures today using the Meter Plus probe, so it's pretty new to me, and I'm still working things out before I start putting things onto camera, and it's actually showing how the app works and things like that. But so far I've used it a couple of times, and it's quite an impressive piece of kit. So a couple of hours later, we want to open the Kamado. So this is 2 hours in, and as you can see, we've got a beautiful colour on the outside. That rub is really soaked in and formed a nice bark on the outside, and now we want to wrap it. So the reason we wrap it is because this lets the brisket steam with its own juices, and that is what really helps us tenderize a brisket. So we're wrapping in butcher's paper today. So I've got a piece of butcher's paper probably about 3.5 foot long on the bench, and we're just going to put the brisket on there, and we roll it through the butcher's paper, making sure that we fold the ends in partly, so that we're sealing all of that moisture in there. So 3.5 foot, I've got a little bit left over, so I probably could have got away with 3 foot. But when you are rolling it, make sure you monitor which side is up and which side is down, because when I cooked that Sainsbury's brisket last year, I didn't monitor that, and I put it back in the Kamado for the last few hours with the fat cap down, and I found that this really stuck to the butcher's paper where it was rendering down that fat, and it was all sitting there. Where with this cook, I'm cooking it with the fat side up, and as you can see later on, when we peel the butcher's paper off, it just peels away very, very easily. So we've got that wrapped up nice and tight. I've put that temperature probe back in through the butcher's paper, and we're going back onto the Kamado at the same heat, and we're just going to monitor that temperature up to 93 degrees C is where we want to first be having a look at it. So it's taken another 2.5 hours, so we're at 4.5 hours on this cook now, and it says that we're at 93 degrees. So we take it off, and we want to check for tenderness. So what I've also learnt from that Sainsbury's brisket before is that if you're probing through butcher's paper, it can give you a false tenderness reading, because the butcher's paper is quite stiff. As you're probing through, you think that the brisket is stiff, but it's not. It's the resistance from the paper. So I am going to unwrap it to check my tenderness. So there's a few little tight spots that are still there, so I just want to wrap it back up again, put it back on, and take it another couple of degrees. So I decided to take this from 93 and now up to 96. This took 25 minutes to get there. I suppose I would have thought 3 degrees would have been a lot quicker, but I suppose we've got to build the steam back up inside of that butcher's paper after we've let all the steam out, checking the tenderness before. So this took another 25 minutes, so we're pretty much up to 5 hours now on the cook. We're going to take it off, unwrap it again, check for tenderness. You can see the amount of juice that's pouring out of this now, all across the butcher's paper and across the plate underneath. So we know that it's going to be super tasty. We're probing now, and it's like, the best way to describe it is warm peanut butter. So I have stolen that phrase from some other people that have said that before. You don't want it like soft butter out of the fridge, because then that's too far. It's just going to fall apart when you're slicing it. You want a small amount of resistance, but not too much. So if you've got a jar of peanut butter and you pushed a probe into there, it would be a lot less. You'd have a little bit more resistance than you would softened butter that has been sitting out on the side for a couple of hours. So that is the texture that I'm going for on this brisket. So we've reached that optimum level of tenderness. So I'm going to leave this unwrapped on the side just for 20 minutes, and that is going to help stall the cooking process. If we was to wrap this straight back up and put this into a cool bag, then you're going to be cooking it even further, because you get sort of a residual carryover when you're cooking meat, and especially when you've been cooking meat for such a long time. So you want to rest it for about 20 minutes uncovered, then wrap it back up. So when I wrapped it back up this time, I've wrapped it up in foil because I don't want any of that juice to escape. I've double wrapped this up in foil, and then I've wrapped it in a towel and I've put it into a cool bag, where it's sat in the cool bag for about an hour and a half while we was getting our other veggies prepared. So the reason I decided to do this as a brisket roast over an American style sort of pit beans and mac and cheese and things like that is because of that level of fat, or the lesser level of fat that you're going to get from pasture fed. It does give you less of a brisket feel than what your USD Prime does, but it's still super tender when you bite it. So we've done it with this as a roast for Easter Sunday. So it's had this hour and a half rest while we've been prepping everything else. We're going to take it out of the bag, unwrap it from the towel, take it out of the foil, give it a nice slice through, and as you can see, it's still got plenty of moisture on the inside. It's got a nice little smoke ring around the outside as well from that apple, and it's still beautifully tender. So I think it's about time we gave it a taste. So let's give it a taste. Got a nice beautiful piece here. So it's definitely more of an intense beefy flavour than I've had from briskets previously, and that comes from that dry aging that they've done over at McCade. So it does make a beautiful brisket. The flat hasn't got as much intramuscular fat through there, so it's not dry, but it's not as moist as it could be. I think I would like to do this cook again with the point end, where with the point that I bought at the same time as this flat, I've done burnt ends and things like that with, and I think we could get some really nice slices out of a point end. So next time I go back down, I think I'm going to pick up another point and do it as a roast like this, and see what sort of results we can get out of that, being a UK grass-fed brisket rather than your grain-fed, grain-fed briskets that you can import in. So if you like what we're doing here at Barbecue Life, then please do subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.